Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at some of the biggest astrological transits for the week ahead between now and Sunday at the end of the week. This is something new that I'm trying. A long time ago, I did weekly overviews and went away from them because I often prefer to focus on whatever transit is peaking on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday. But in some situations, it just makes sense when there's a week of a lot of transits unfolding to start the week by looking at them in review, kind of just looking at the big picture of the week ahead. So I'm going to do that. And then on certain Mondays, when there's a big transit happening on Monday, we'll probably just focus on that. But I am going to try to throw in these weekly overviews from time to time because it's a nice way to start your week off, just getting a feel for where everything's heading. And in many cases, if there is something happening on Monday and it's not the world's biggest transit like an eclipse or something that really requires its own episode, we'll cover it as we are here on Monday, but then we'll look at everything else coming for the week ahead, and then we'll cover those transits as we go forth through the week. So that's the idea behind this. I hope that you will enjoy it. As always, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are very close to 70,000 subscribers as of the time that I'm recording this. We're just prior to the fall equinox. Our goal is to get to 70. I think we're about 500 subscribers away right now, which is awesome. So regardless of when we cross that threshold, if you watch but haven't yet subscribed, it's free to do so. It helps us grow our business and community. We really appreciate it. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I am going to take you over to the website because we are in enrollment season for our first year course. If you are brand spanking new to astrology and you want to find the best place to start, like really, really new, try the Astrology for Beginners recorded course, and then you could jump into the first year course because we assume that people have a little bit of familiarity with astrology already. But the first year course begins November 16th. That gives you time to take the beginners class first if you feel like you need it. But for people who have a little bit of background, this is a one-year immersion into the study of ancient Hellenistic astrology, which is a fantastic, beautiful, deep craft. And we unpack it over the course of a full year, 30 sessions together, breakout study sessions led by our tutors. We have a forum discussion where we have tutors there to help you as well. So it's a robust program that's meant for people who want to take their own personal studies, or if this is like your personal spiritual practice or hobby, this is going to give you tools to go much more deeply into the use of astrology over the course of your life, or for people that you're close with. And some people may want to practice professionally, in which case we also set you up for success on that level. After today's talk, when I sign off, you can learn more about the year one program, because there is about a 10-minute informational video that I've tagged on after I sign off with regular content. So if you want to stick around and learn more about the program that starts on November 16th, be sure to do that. At the bottom, you will find that we have our pre-registration sale, our early bird rates that go until October 15th. So you have some time to save on the course cost by using these special sale prices. And then we do have need-based tuition, which I highly recommend you use if you're someone who wants to study but has to work within a limited or fixed income. We understand that people have a lot of different things that make it stressful to try to do something for yourself, like study astrology. We think that astrology is a sacred topic that should be very accessible. And so we try to make sure that we have affordable pricing. So be sure to check that out, apply for it. You can tell us your budget and we will work to create a tuition plan for you that is based on what you can afford. And we have a sliding scale that we let you work within. So anyway, check that out. Stick around afterward for more on the course. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. It's a great election with this program starting in November, right as Pluto goes back into Aquarius. Great signature for starting an astrological learning journey. Okay, now let us shift our attention to the astrology of the week ahead. So I'm going to be looking today at today's is September 23rd, and we're going to take it all the way through the 29th, which takes us Monday through Sunday. So I'm going to put the chart up on the screen. We're going to walk through the transits of our week ahead, and we'll note some of the big things that are happening. Just yesterday, we came off from a Venus square to Pluto. I hope you're all doing okay. Today, Venus ingresses into the sign of Scorpio. So one of the big pieces of news to start our week is the ingress of Venus into Scorpio. That's coming right off from Venus's square from Libra to Pluto in Capricorn that happened yesterday, Sunday, September 22nd. So Venus entering Scorpio begins a period of a little less than a month where Venus will be in the sign of her exile. All that really means is that this is a place where Venus is now working through the archetypal tension that is present between Venus and Mars. That doesn't mean it's a bad Venus. It doesn't mean you should think super negatively about it. It just means that we have a Venus who now has to hold that deep, watery tension of Mars's sign of the Scorpion. Venus is a goddess of sensuality and pleasure. And so when you put her in this sign, you get things like eroticism and passion and emotional depth. And you get a Venus that's willing to cook with fire, which is the great part about Venus in Scorpio. It's a spicy Venus placement. But for some people, that spice will also mean greater levels of conflict or discord, or the waters may be troubled emotionally for the next several weeks. And so to start this week, we just notice that Venus in Scorpio is bringing the heat. The next thing that we want to point out are the aspects happening this week. And we're going to start by looking at, it is a big week for Mercury. All of the aspects of the week, except for one, are aspects from Mercury. What does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that this is a week where things like communication, the mind, the mental and rational side of things are going to be more active and expressive. Ideas are important this week, speech and communication, technology, and the intellect. These are the kinds of topics that you'll see very active. Of course, Mercury is very well dignified in the sign of Virgo right now. And so that means that we have a Mercury that's able to navigate these different transits that are coming, I think, pretty effectively. We are going to be visiting each of these dynamics as the week unfolds in different and creative ways. But for now, let's just look at how they unfold in order. So first, we have Mercury on the 24th. Let me advance this by just one day. We have Mercury on the 24th, that is tomorrow, Tuesday, moving through a trine to Uranus. Now, one thing that I love about trines is that they are generally supportive. They are expansive. They tend to bring beneficial people or connections into our lives, or they create flow and a general sense of harmony. What I love about this for Mercury is that when you have these mental, intellectual, communicative, technological qualities coming in contact with a planet like Uranus, who is progressive and also very inventive. You think of Uranus, you think of like a lightning strike that's hitting the mind when it contacts Mercury. And therefore, you have a lot of inventiveness, a lot of original thinking as a combination. You also have things like thinking outside of the box or defiant or rebellious thinking. But in a smooth trine, this means that it will probably not be the kind that burns bridges. So effective, practical, well-resourced, original thinking, problem solving, thinking outside of the box, original and daring kinds of thought structures or thought forms that will be coming through. This is also that unexpected good news or that unexpected feeling of just having the wind at your back and maybe feeling well-resourced in terms of the kinds of communication that's happening, the kinds of conversations that are coming up, the kinds of news or information that's suddenly popping and surprising you. So I love that this is kind of leading off our week on Tuesday, tomorrow. You'll be feeling this building today, by the way, and you'll notice that it's sort of in the air for the rest of the week. Although one thing that makes this a little tricky is that as soon as Mercury is done with Uranus, it goes right into another aspect. And so it's like, from one archetype right into another might make it difficult to sort of feel the afterglow of the first transit. So watch for this one today and tomorrow especially. All right, so if we move on now to September 25th and just go one day further, that's Wednesday. For Wednesday this week, I have a very special episode prepared on the question of whether or not astrology is a science or a form of divination. In my perspective, astrology is ultimately a form of divination. Now, when we're looking at things like reading birth charts, reading horary charts, that something fundamental is happening when we read a chart that is of the nature of divination. And one of the real inspirations of my career, his name is Jeffrey Cornelius, a very wonderful astrologer that recently passed away. He came and taught for my students in my school for a whole week in 2014 and had a very lasting impact on me, that series of talks that he gave for my students. And his book, The Moment of Astrology, is all about asking us to consider that there is a highly intuitive and divinatory component to actually doing astrology, that it's not just an objective science in that sense. This Wednesday, I'll be reading you an essay that he wrote to give you a flavor for what he was like. And that essay asking us to consider that there is a kind of an astrological form of mediumship that happens when good readings take place, which is a provocative idea, but it's a very Mercury Neptune idea. And we're going to be working with that essay just for your consideration and to honor the fact that he recently passed away. I'll be reading you that essay on Wednesday. It's a longer episode, and because we're unpacking an essay and I'm commenting on it as we go. So that is also a very Mercury Neptune like piece of content this week in terms of just swimming in the ocean of really beautiful, deep, otherworldly ideas about what's going on with astrology itself. So I chose to do that to honor one of my mentors. That'll be on Wednesday. But this Wednesday, aside from that topic, Mercury's opposition to Neptune is also, generally speaking, pitting the rational and the mystical against one another and asking us if we can hold the tension between the two. Mercury in Virgo loves to be organized, thoughtful, conscientious, meticulous, in control, but usually, hopefully not in like an obsessive way, but, managing things through intelligence and clear boundaries and useful items and actions and things like that. Neptune is asking us to like loosen our grip on reality and go into an altered state, to swim in the ocean of the numinous and the divine and that which is non-ordinary, magical, subtle, timeless, imaginative. So the pitting of Mercury against Neptune in the middle of this week really highlights probably the most dramatic feature of this week's Mercury transits. There are 3 of them. The Mercury trine to Uranus is interesting because here you have this very constructive, inventive kind of energy, very earthy and practical, but electric and original. And then immediately Mercury goes into this opposition with Neptune in the middle of the week. So just a fantastic dynamic there. I would also wonder about things like illusion, fantasy, deception within communication dynamics. What are we saying? Is it true? Is it grounded? Is it real? On the other hand, are we being asked to open our minds to things that we haven't considered before and just allow ourselves to be influenced by ideas or perceptions or thoughts or different directions that can take us off of our most set or fixed ideas or beliefs? So that openness to influence is also a big question for Mercury and Neptune. Do we need more of that openness, or do we need to be careful about that openness? That's also at the heart, in my opinion, of divination itself. When we read for people, it is very important that we're taking care of ourselves as practitioners so that what we say and how we say it is coming through something of a clean channel. By that, I don't mean perfection. I don't mean that we have to be on some kind of moral high ground above all the other human beings. The same thing for therapy or any caring art or profession. It's like the ability that I have to be a medium for things that are useful to come through in any kind of healing context is dependent on, to some extent, how well I take care of myself, and also how easily I also surrender and put myself in the hands of people who are there to help and guide me. So the question's also about how we allow ourselves to be healed and directed by other people's voices and healing influences, while also making sure that we have appropriate boundaries and we're letting the right people guide us and influence us. That's a big part of Mercury opposite Neptune. These are just some of the thoughts coming to my mind right now. But again, we'll be unpacking more of this as the week goes on. Then when we go forward just a little bit on the same day, we have Mercury coming off from the opposition. And as Mercury comes off the opposition to Neptune, by just at the very end of the day on Wednesday, the 25th, kind of peeking into, depending on your time zone, where you live in the world, peeking into Thursday, September 26th, Mercury will then trine Pluto. Again, both in earth signs. Here we have Virgo and Capricorn. So interesting trines to Uranus and Pluto within like 2 days of one another. And in the middle, the opposition to Neptune. So again, busy week for Mercury. When I think of Mercury trining Pluto, I think of the same kind of constructive, useful combination of planets that a trine represents. So this is flowing, harmonious contact with Pluto. Mercury in Virgo and Pluto in Capricorn can really help us to excavate or dig up useful things. So whether that's unconscious material that we can now articulate or understand, that contact with Neptune that takes us into the imaginative or the imaginal can then simultaneously give us a shift or a kind of movement through the mind that allows us to turn the soil over and maybe think of new thoughts or ideas or cleanse the palate intellectually or mentally somehow. I like Mercury trining Pluto in these signs as purifying for the mind, as excavating or digging up unconscious material that we can immediately do something useful with, or that we can feel healed from by virtue of the contact that we have with unconscious material, especially on the level of the mind. Or it's our ability to say or look at or explore or talk about difficult things, whether that's in therapy or with a friend. Mercury trine Pluto can also be about effectively using things and finding ways of, like Mercury is such a problem solver in Virgo. Contact with Pluto in Capricorn says, I found a way to do something, or I've solved a problem or an issue. And that contact with Pluto empowers the mind of Mercury to then take that discovery and put it into action. So Mercury trine Pluto is also about our willingness to explore deep, subterranean, taboo material mentally and in communication. Coming off the opposition to Neptune and the trine to Uranus, this makes for a really interesting week with respect, again, to the mind. What is on our mind? How are we thinking? How are we organizing our thoughts and experiences? The shift or change that we might have in perceptions, ideas, patterns of thought or communication are really profound this week. Now, toward the very end of the week, we're going to go forward here, and we're going to look at Sunday, the 29th. Sunday the 29th is our last aspect of this week, and that is a trine from Mars in Cancer to Saturn in Pisces. Here's what I love about this one. What I love about this transit is that Mars in Cancer connecting with the other malefic in an effective trine means that you have two planets that we usually associate with things that are a little bit more challenging or difficult. For example, Saturn gives us those experiences and lessons in life that help us to mature and grow. And it's often a little serious, and it comes, Saturn, with a kind of gravitas, like a heaviness, some kind of cross that we're bearing with Saturn always. At the same time, Mars in Cancer gives us the, let's say, the emotional and it gives us the emotional motivation to do difficult things, with a sense of greater emotional responsibility and being emotionally motivated to address difficult things. This feels to me like, hey, we could address some difficult things in relationships or in family, and maybe there's a greater willingness to talk about or address some of those heavier topics. Notice that Venus is also climbing into a grand water trine from Scorpio, also suggesting that there is a great emotional depth available to us. You're going to start feeling that on Sunday when Mars and Saturn connect through these water signs, but it's going to grow in intensity over the following week as we come into the solar eclipse in Libra, who's also ruled by that Venus in the sign of Scorpio, which will then be forming something of a grand water trine with Mars and Saturn. So this is just the beginning of a moment where some kind of emotional activity, advocacy, depth, maybe a little bit of a charged or vulnerable kind of state or space that comes up with respect to things like family and the deeper, more vulnerable emotional dynamics of relationships, as well as things that we feel just very passionate about and that we feel emotionally charged up to like address. But weightier things, deeper things, for sure. This grand water trine coming off in the eclipse with Libra too is all about addressing a new way of doing relationships that will come about as we look at and deal with a very complex, deep, and maybe even ancestral level of karma in our lives. And I say that because Mars in Cancer can also activate the emotional depths of our lives through things like family and family history. Anyway, these are just some impressions. We will revisit Mars trine Saturn at the end of the week. We will be visiting Mercury trine Pluto. We'll be looking at Mercury trine Uranus. And in the middle of the week, like I said, just kind of a fun, special way of looking at Mercury Neptune. I will be doing a reading of an essay by Jeffrey Cornelius on the question of, whether or not astrologers are sort of talking to spirit in the act of doing a reading. Like, let me just give you an example before we get there so that you're kind of primed for this talk on Wednesday, because I really want people to try to listen to the entirety of this essay. I think it's about a 45-minute episode, so it's a little longer. But I think that astrology is, while there's a whole like astrologia, there's a whole logos to what we do. It's reasonable, there's craft, it's not just completely subjective. That there is this highly subjective, almost like mediumistic part of astrology where the way we tap into symbols and read them in the context of a live reading with people who bring a certain charge and a certain reason for being there into the context of a reading, that the ability that we have to adequately and beautifully express symbols in the context of a reading is a kind of divinatory act. And I would say that one of the great secrets of astrologers, like across the board, is that we hide behind things like the apparent objectivity of all these transits. Like, I'm just giving you this objective weather report for the week. But the truth is that they are all signs and omens. And the reason that we generally like one channel or another, one astrology content creator over another, or one reader over another, is because of the way that each reader is able to be a medium for a kind of artful expression of the symbols that speak to us, that actually resonate, and that it's not that astrologer is like getting the symbols right. It's that something about their intuitive relationship, their artful relationship with the oracle speaks to us. And that is why there are so many different astrologers who have different gifts and skills that people resonate with differently. It's not because astrology is completely subjective, that there's nothing we aren't all talking about, like this week's Mercury transits, but the way each astrologer addresses them and the kind of symbolism they evoke and the way they articulate the patterns, my angle that I see the jewel from, right? That is a kind of artful thing that is reflective of an astrologer's relationship with symbol, with symbolism, and with the oracle itself. And so that is a huge part of why we do astrology, of how astrology is cultivated, and of what we end up loving about the astrologers that we love. So that whole dimension is going to be like that whole idea about something that's going on in astrology that is much more intuitive and divinatory than we think, will be the subject of our Wednesday talk when we look at Mercury opposite Neptune. It just felt like the perfect transit to talk about the subject under. So I really do hope you will enjoy that, and it will be my way of honoring a mentor in my life and his work. So stay tuned for that. I hope you're having a great day today and that this has been fun. Let me know if you like these overviews, by the way. I'm resistant. I'm reluctant and resistant to do things like weekly overviews. But I don't know. I'm experimenting. So you tell me what you think. Do you like a weekly overview like this? Like I said, there'll be some Mondays where it just makes more sense to just go right for a big transit that's happening like Monday or Tuesday and just devote a lot of time to it. But I do feel like when there's space to do so and it makes sense, like today really felt like it was a good one, I might do a weekly overview. So you tell me if you like it. On that note, I'm going to sign off. And after I do, you can hear about a 10-minute video talking about what our upcoming course includes. It starts November 16th. So stick around to hear more about that. And I hope to see some of you in classes soon. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the Year 1 program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall. And I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's are some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything you need to know how to access the course is there, and you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year. It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling, because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November, and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without, inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities. And then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. It's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away. We'll study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes, and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages, or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page, on the year one page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto is moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These airy signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying, and I hope to see some of you in class soon.